Okay, I think we are live. Um, Welcome everyone. Welcome engineers, project managers, operators. We're excited to have this host this webinar today. We are doing it live. So forgive us if there are any glitches or anything. And if you need a copy of it to send to someone, or you think someone should see it, we will be sending out a recording after the fact. You'll get an email on that. But anyway, we wanted to get together today to talk about dam safety. It's something we have spent some time talking about, and we're finally at the point where we can do this. We're getting various questions from different clients on this, and we thought it'd be good to aggregate those questions and do something that maybe reaches a bit of a broader audience. So without further ado, let me just get this presentation started up. Okay. So dam safety, I think before we got into it, I thought we could quickly do introductions for those of you who don't know us. My name is David Belmont. I'm Vice President of Journey. I have a pretty diverse background, but I think I've always been really passionate about growing teams and companies and people. And that's what brought me here. Scott, maybe you can give a quick introduction.
I'm Scott Herbst. I'm president and founder of Journey Engineering Corporation. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I have backgrounds in construction, primarily earthworks, such as dams or landfills, and also passionate about growing teams and people. And been pretty excited to see how Journey's growing to where we are today.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect intro for Journey in general. You know, if you talk to myself or Scott or the rest of the Journey partners, the rest of the Journey team, I think we've always tried to build this company on a foundation of strength in our people. We do believe we can build an engineering company based on the strength of our people, which sometimes in our industry, I feel like people get treated like disposable assets, which is not something we subscribe to. And then the other thing about, I just wanted to quickly talk through our mission. Our mission at Journey is we want to partner with our clients to build assets that work. And the two key pieces there, I think, are, partner. We want to be part of your team, no politics. We're just here to help. And then the second piece is building assets that work. As an engineering team, we understand that a lot of our work starts in theory, but it must end in practice. We have to hit the return on investment goals, the safety objectives, it has to work. And I think one of the things that we're very proud of is that all of our engineers regularly put on work boots, walk sites, help commission, help troubleshoot, help understand on the ground, understand solutions. And I think that's something we're going to continue, or I hope we continue to focus around and band around as a company. But anyway, that's enough of an introduction. Let's get right into it. So dam safety, we have a few questions here, 5 questions that we've aggregated. What has changed recently to make this a priority? What regulatory bodies and documents should we be aware of? What's the new definition of a dam? And then getting a little bit more granular into the classification. And then I think very importantly, what can we do now to manage this from a practical point of view? So Scott, what changed?
Yeah, thank you, David. So this webinar is going to be fairly high level, and we can dive into the granular details as other questions come in. But reality, in December of 2018, the Alberta government released a new directive, Alberta Dam and Canal Safety Directive, and within that directive, it really did prescribe some new requirements for owners and operators of facilities that would be classified as a dam, and that's rolled out late in the year of 2018. It wasn't widely known, and now as 2019 and 2020, we're starting to see more and more clients being brought to the attention to this directive.
I was going to ask that actually. So it came out in 2018. Why now are we getting a lot of questions about it, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. The government rolled it out and has continued to roll it out and educate operators. I think for the most part, a lot of operators that have these assets that are existing, maybe they weren't aware that they really were classified as dams. And with the new directive, there's regulatory requirements that they have to meet. So the government's out there talking to the operators and letting them know that there is this directive and that they have to be in compliance with it. So yeah, it's really just bringing more and more awareness to it.
Okay, so if I'm an operator now with a letter from the regulator in hand, what regulatory bodies, documents should I be aware of?
The regulation, construction, operation, maintenance, or decommissioning of dams in Canada fall under provincial or territorial territorial responsibility. Here in Alberta, the key legislation documents would be the Water Act, the Water Ministerial Regulation, which is the ministerial regulation which holds the new Alberta Dam and Canal Safety Directive that we're talking about, and then any ministerial orders that would follow and highlight any of those regulations.
Perfect. And high level, what are the requirements out of those various documents?
Yeah, some of the key changes found in Part 6 of the Water Ministerial Regulation, along with amendments including the Alberta Regulation Water Act, dam and safety, dam and canal safety. There's general responsibilities and accountabilities that the owner has to have. There's requirements for investigation, design, construction, and then documentation to follow after construction. You have to have an an emergency management plan in case of a dam failure. And one of the biggest things is a consequence classification has to be done for all dam structures.
Okay. One of the things that we keep coming back to is this definition of a dam changing. So can we get a little more granular into the definition of a dam under the new directive?
Yeah, within the regulation, dam is defined as a barrier constructed for retention, storing, or diverting water, including water containing other substances like fluid waste or flowable tailings, and then any supporting structures within that for any associated infrastructure for that structure as well, like spillways or whatnot, all fall under the dam and canal safety regulation. So basically, with that, anything that holds water is going to be classified as a dam. The real question is, what is the consequence classification of that structure?
Oh, okay. So the question we should be asking is, do I have a dam or not? You have a dam. It's what is the consequence classification of the dam?
Yes.
And how is that determined, Scott?
Yeah, there's the consequence classification really looks upon key elements or thresholds of the actual structure. One of the main triggers is volume and storage or berm height. So they've defined, within the threshold, anything that's over 30,000 cubic meters and has a berm height over 2.5 meters is going to certainly need a classification, consequence classification review, and could trigger higher thresholds. So we've actually got a graphic up here that kind of shows you the different scenarios. On the top, there's a structure that has over 30,000 cubic meters of live storage, and live storage is defined by the storage above existing grade. So if you have your live storage, your water is above the existing grade and your berm's above the existing grade, and it's over 2.5 meters, that's going to could trigger a higher consequence classification. Similarly, if you have a reservoir that's within the ground, but that live storage above the ground is over 30,000 cubic meters, and you have a dam over 2.5 meters, it could trigger with those thresholds of a higher consequence dam. And then if you have a water storage reservoir or a dam that has the bulk of the 30,000 cubic meter storage or greater below below the existing grade, and berms less than 2.5 meters, you have an opportunity to meet some of the lower thresholds. But really it's going to depend on what the consequence classification comes out at. And the consequence classification is really a factor of risk. And what they'll do, look at the structure and assess the impacts or the consequences of failure. And specifically, they'll look at impacts or cost of public health, environmental health or damage, cultural values, or land and property value economy.
So, okay, so there's the one a little bit murky idea of what is the risk of failure, and then you have the very defined kind of height of berm and live storage. So those are the three things that typically you'll be looking closely at in the consequence classification of one of these dams.
Absolutely. And then if there was a failure, what would be the consequences downstream of that failure? And would there be impacts on human health, impacts on environment, cultural values, or economic damage to either land value or other types?
Perfect. I hope that's clear. So then the next question we're going to get into is impact. So as an operator with a, I think a lot of operators here now have these existing structures that are now classified, and they have maybe a letter in hand. They're going to go through this. What kind of impacts can I expect?
Yeah, some of the impacts would be, obviously you have to complete the dam consequence classification, understand what that classification is, and it's really going to be case by case on that classification, which start to prescribe some of the other stuff that requirements in the regulation you need. But some of the big things would be the owners would have to have an operating manager and safety manager whom have to have 10 and 15 years of experience respectively. You may require annual engineering inspections of the structure and annual performance reviews completed by a designer of record. And you have to have that designer of record registered with Alberta Environment, Alberta AER and Alberta Environment and Parks. And there must be an engineer of record has at least 15 years of experience. But again, it greatly depends upon consequence classifications.
Yeah, okay, I was going to reiterate that too, greatly dependent on consequence classification. That makes sense. Okay, let's get into the practical management then. So how do we step through these, as in both cases of an existing structure or looking at designing a new structure? How do we practically manage these new requirements?
Yeah, so obviously if you have a structure that has always been called a dam or referred to as a dam, you more than likely understand some of the requirements that fall within the Water Act. But if you have a structure that's been newly defined or directed to you to this regulation change, we can step back and look at what that structure is. We can do a complete desktop review, and we can also look at any construction records that are available and start understanding and assessing what the risk is and what might the consequence classification be. In a lot of cases, it would involve us going to site and again, reviewing the existing structure, reviewing any records and information that is available, and then doing any studies to back up any missing information, and then ultimately complete the consequence classification.
And I'll just interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Don't panic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that when you look into the directive, it's very onerous. It sounds very onerous, and certainly is if you have a high risk structure. There's going to be a lot of things you need to complete, but with our experience, some of the lower consequence classifications, we can manage to go through the directive and help the client with some of the more robust or more strenuous requirements and meet the directive in that case. But yeah, by all means, when you pick up the directive, it's easy to hit the panic button. But in reality is, we can guide you through the process, and then once we get the classification completed, we can help you through the rest of it.
Yeah, I think we've both sat on the client side and received letters from the regulator, and they can sometimes be pretty officious sounding. So
Yeah.
I think that's a key takeaway here from what I've seen the team work through is it's a very manageable process. So next question, that's just a follow up I had from before. What about if I'm looking at a new structure?
Right.
What can I do to practically manage, maybe decrease my future effort during the design process?
If you're looking at a new structure, I think the earlier you involve a team like us, the better it is. And then I would suggest getting involved right up in the siting of it. In a lot of cases, we can look at the area the client's looking at placing one of these structures, and the structure might be a freshwater storage reservoir for fracking, could be a brine pond, and the client might have an idea, well, it's just a pond, but in reality is it could be defined as a dam, and then it needs to have all the requirements to meet the directive. So we find if we get involved up front, we could often help them site in a location that would reduce some of the design portions of the structure that would meet or exceed a high or a substantially high
So consequence of failure,
yeah.
berm height and live storage.
Yeah, so we would focus on that exactly and try to get water storage reservoir, if that's the case, where it has most of the live storage below the grade, or we certainly wouldn't want to build big berms. And if the availability of topographic constraint or location isn't there, we can look at other ways to reduce the thresholds.
Perfect. So what next?
Whether you're looking to build a new structure or you have an existing structure and you have a letter in hand from a regulator and understanding what were the impacts to this regulation change, give us a call. We're here to help, or email us at info@journeyeng.ca. And yeah, we're here to help.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that we're always happy to hear from current or future clients, and more than willing to spend some time on the phone to talk you through an issue, challenge you have. So please give us a call. And yeah, a lot of this, as you just heard, is very situation dependent. So we promised a short webinar, and that's a short webinar. So I hope you found it helpful, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.